Hi, I'm Matt Moore with SandJack Whitetails, and this is my CWD story. I've been around the deer farming industry for a long time, but this is my first year to actually have my own breeder pens and to actually own my own whitetails. I started out in the deer farming industry actually behind the camera lens. When High Roller opened up its doors, James had asked me to come over and to help start filming some of their big breeder bucks. And doing this year after year after year, you know, just trying to capture those magical 3 and 4 and 5 seconds of some of these big giants. And after asking a lot of questions and going and traveling to different farms, I started to pick up on the pedigree, started to pick up on what other deer farmers liked and what the industry really liked on some of these breeder bucks. After applying for my permits and working hard, building my own deer pens, I went back over to High Roller, and James and I sat down and went over some pedigrees, and we tried to figure out what I liked and what was best for me. After going through a lot of different pedigrees and looking at all of High Roller's inventory, I finally settled with going with a shadow doe and going with an express doe. And I wanted to breed my shadow doe to freeze frame because I'd filmed him ever since he was yearling. He was just gorgeous, a big frame, big typical buck with lots of points, gorgeous. I really like freeze frame over shadow. And on my express doe, I wanted to go with T-bow. T-bow's got a great pedigree, and another reason why I like T-bow is because James let me name him. Several years ago when T-bow was just a little fella, we needed to come up with a deer when we were editing his footage. And James told me what he was out of and about the Max Bow line, and at that time, T-bow was a very popular college football player and in the Heisman race, and I said, let's go with Tim Tebow. Tebow was a perfect name. We decided on that, and I wanted to breed my express with Tebow. They were live bred, and in February, High Roller brought my deer to me. It was a lot of fun. You know, going into this, I knew that I was probably, or was, the smallest deer farmer in the state of Texas. But I was so excited. I was trying to get quality whitetails instead of quantity. I knew that I couldn't afford to get big in a hurry, but I wanted to start out with some great genetics. And my freeze frame shadow doe, she had a button buck fawn and a doe fawn. Super excited, super healthy, great set of twin fawns. And then my T-bow express doe, she had a button buck fawn, and boy was he big. A big old button buck fawn. They were all healthy. It was a lot of fun. Just a few days after these fawns were born is when our Texas deer farming industry kind of turned over because of CWD. We all know the problems, we all know what had happened, but me being a small deer breeder, our plans of going forward, I felt like I was handcuffed because they put me at a T3 level. Even though I started out with brand new pens, even though I got my deer from High Roller, a T2, I was handcuffed and put into a T3 because I hadn't had any deaths reported. And I talked to everybody that I could talk to, got on the phone with Parks and Wildlife, and I even asked this question: way your rules are set, the only way I can get out of this T3 is to have a death. So if I went out and bought another deer from a T2 and killed the deer, and good Lord willing, it didn't come back positive CWD, I would get moved down to a T2. And they said yes. That's exactly what would happen. Go kill a deer. I talked to a couple of breeders about this, and I had 2 different breeders were willing to give me a deer to have it killed and tested to get to T2, but after we discussed it and talked about it, we just weren't going to do that. I didn't go to this trouble and this expense to kill deer. We're doing all this to raise deer and get things better, and I just wouldn't do it. But I still was handcuffed because my plan going into this, my plan with High Roller, is that the end of September, early October, we were going to dart the deer one time, haul them back to High Roller to have them live bred or AI'd or put in their breeder program. But that couldn't happen because if I took these deer, the deer that I bought from High Roller, and brought them back there, they would automatically be at a T3. I talked to texted them Health Commission, talked to everybody. Everybody said, that is so retarded. Why do they have you at a T3? But I was still handcuffed. So we had to go to Plan B. Plan B was to come over, dart the deer, cedars in, leave them in, for the 15 days, pull cedars, take them to a vet over in Center, and have them AI'd. And everybody that I talked to said that was going to be really, really risky. But with that industry, you know how it is, getting vets lined up to AI during the month of November. And being the smallest deer farmer, I couldn't find anybody to come here. The way the schedules were, and High Roller did everything they could to set things up for me, and everything worked out perfect. We went to a vet, Ward Animal Hospital, and we pulled up there. There was probably 15 guys there waiting there to help us to make sure that we can get this process speeded up as fast as possible. The vet was there, AI'd, everything was great, everything was perfect. We talked to several people and everybody agreed that after it was AI'd, because we had to travel back 45 minutes with these deer, let's leave them in the trailer, let's let them calm down, wait till it's dark. I got back over to my pens and I thought everything was fine. The next morning, one was dead. Having a dead deer in your pens is nothing new to the industry. Anytime you raise livestock, it's going to happen. But when it happens because of rules and regulations that I don't have any control over, it really hurts. And going into this, I had several people tell me how risky this is going to be to move the deer 45 minutes and have them under stress that long. The odds are it's not in your favor. You might have problems. And the worst part about this was having to tell my wife, having to tell my daughter that we lost our favorite deer.
My dad called her 2026 because of the number on her tag, but I called her Rachel. The two deer we bought from High Roller Whitetails, I named them Leah and Rachel because they were two characters in the Bible. My dad told me that a lot of deer farmers in Texas have had to have their deer killed and tested for CWD, even though their deer don't have the disease. I just feel really bad for the deer farmers that have had this happen to them. I just hope that we can resolve this problem quickly.
Honestly, I didn't have the strength to pick up the phone and to call High Roller and to tell James that 2026 had died, because he'd put in a lot of legwork and put in a lot of time in for me, organizing the cedars, darting, the AI, getting the vet lined up. And I just couldn't tell him over the phone. So I sent him a text message and we text back and forth. I finally did drive over there to High Roller, sit down with him and talk and kind of get a new plan. And this was James's idea for me to film this. He said, film this and to tell everybody this story, because we know that everybody out there has been affected by CWD in some form or fashion. Whether you were positive on your farm, which you probably wasn't, because there was just so few many of all the stories, and this is just one case. This is just one case to where the rules and regulations caused a death of a deer that wasn't necessary. And I know that everybody in the industry should be or wants to be good stewards of our resources and good stewards of what God has given us. But let's check in with my good friend, Brother Mark, and let's try to get some clarification.
You know, as a pastor for the last 22 years, I've studied the scriptures because every week, of course, I have to teach and preach. And one of the consistent themes and repetitive ideas of the scriptures is this concept of stewardship. And stewardship is really this idea that we don't really own anything, that we are just caretakers and managers of all that God has entrusted to us. In fact, the Bible says in one place in the book of Psalms that the earth is the Lord's and all that's in it belong to God. And so there's this idea that whether it's our finances or whether it's our families or whether it's our careers or whether it's the land and the game that we manage, none of it really belongs to us. It means that we're stewards and that we're managers and that we're caretakers over all that God has given to us. And we have to always keep in mind that with great blessing comes great responsibility. And the one thing that we need more than anything that helps us manage all that God has entrusted to us well is wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to know the right thing, even if it's not the easy thing. And sometimes that's not always the easy thing to do. But when we know what the right thing is to do, then we can move forward with confidence and courage And the Bible says in James chapter 1 that if we need more wisdom in our life, that we can ask God and God will give it to us. That's a great promise. I'm so thankful for that. And if you're like me, you need all that you can get, and we're asking for God to give us wisdom as we move forward in all of our lives, especially as we manage the land and the game that God has entrusted to us. So if you'd like to know more about a personal relationship with God through His Son, Jesus Christ, just go to deerfarmingtv.com and click on the Moment of Truth tab.